What's good, y'all? Back again for another ghetto gospel, one of wisdom, you know what I mean? Philosophy. Today we're talking about ego versus reality. Don't let the world trick you out your spot. The ego is what we desire to be, what we want to be, what we think we are. It's a falsity, a false self-identity of who we think we are. Reality is who we are. And we sometimes get them messed up, and we become involved ourselves because we don't. Some of us don't want to accept our reality. We live in a society where we say things like, "I'm not settling." What is settling? I'm not gonna be average. What is average? I don't want to be normal. What is normal? We have worldly concepts of these things, and we have gave these terminologies, these wordings, the wrong identity. We look at average from a human perspective as a bad thing. We look at settling from a human perspective as a bad thing. We look at normal from a human perspective as a bad thing. What is bad about it? What is bad about it? We really can't describe what is bad about it. You know what I mean? Because for one, we're leaning on our own understanding of what settling and average means. We create our own perception of what that looks like in our life, not the Wikipedia definition, but in our own life, we create an ideal of what settling looks like, or average looks like, or what normal looks like, and then we create a different identity of being above those things. So we have this negative definition of settling, average, and normal, and then we have this ego definition of not being those things. We try to run far away from those things as far as we can. So because our definition of these things is not God's definition of these things, and that's where the problem occurs. Your reality and what you're attracting in your life may not be settling. That may just be your reality. What you think is average in your life may not actually be average. It may be your definition of it. It may be average in your eyes, not necessarily God's eyes. You see, what's normal that you want to be better, it may not be normal in God's eyes. It may just be normal to you, and you're trying to live up to this image. You think you're thinking of self, so you're trying to live up to the image outside of these things because of your perception of these things is bad in your life. God may look at you like you're great, but you're not thinking about God's opinion because you don't care. You're thinking about your opinion. We be thinking about our opinion. The thing is about the ego side of it, which is greatness and not settling and getting what you want. All those things come from God, so you really can't even brag about them anyway, or you really can't say you did something different to get them. You may have made different decisions and better decisions, but it's still from God. Like, regardless of how we want to cut the pie, all our blessings come from a higher power. All our strengths, talents, come from a higher power. How we look physically, what we can do physically, our charisma, our confidence, it all comes from a higher power, regardless of how you want to split it or how you want to cut it. You know? So, our definition of normal, average, selling, things like this, we have to delete ourselves with that definition, and don't even cut that out your brain, because we're the average human in society is already programmed to have a negative perception of those words. So take that out your brain and just focus on what your purpose in life. That's the thing. To be less is more. Now let me get into it. Some scripture. Go to Romans 12:3. I'm gonna start at Romans 12:3. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith that God has distributed to each of you. Now, in that verse, it's saying basically what we're talking about today. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. Find a level of reality with yourself. And the way you do that is you have to talk to God. You have to ask God, is your ego a part of your reality? Like, is the ego you're wanting to reach, is that even part of your destiny? And talking to God and having a self-diagnosis to understand is your ego even part of your destiny? Is it part of your purpose? And God will tell you if it is, and then he'll guide you into becoming your ego, which it'll cancel. Once you become it, then it'll cancel your ego, and then it'll be your reality. So you'll have reached what you've been feeling in your spirit to reach naturally, because God wanted to reach it, not because you thought you were supposed to reach it. So talking to God, it'll align everything. So God says, yeah, you want this and that. That's what I got for you. But you got to do this and that first, and you got to become this type of person first. That's an alignment. You see, that's you being realistic with yourself, saying, okay, I'm not who I want to be yet, but I'm becoming that person. Or I got to become that person to get these things, or to receive these things that I want. And that's been in alignment with what God thinks about you and what God has for you in the future, and the blessings he has waiting on you. So ask God and diagnose yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and just diagnose yourself. Be realistic with yourself, and talk to God. Ask God, this is what I think about myself. Is that part of my reality? Diagnose yourself, and he'll start breaking down things and showing you things about reality and your life, your spirit, your purpose, and everything. And he'll show you that if what you see for yourself is actually correct in his eyes for what he wants for you. Or maybe you're looking at yourself the wrong way. You see? So talk to God about that. But rather than another part of the verse is, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment. Now, let's break this down. Sober judgment, right? Think of yourself with sober judgment. Now, what that is saying, think about soberness, right? Well, to be sober is to be like to have a sober thought, sober judgment. That means your judgment is not influenced by anything outside of yourself. So whatever judgment you have without being influenced is who you really are, right? So think of yourself in sober judgment, right? So what I mean is, some people can get on liquor and think more of themselves in that moment while they're on liquor than they really do when they're not on liquor. Some people can, just any drug in general, people can think more of themselves than they should because they're influenced by something. And it don't always have to be a physical drug. It can be a mental drug. Like growing up, I heard people say, I'm not conceited, I'm just convinced. Well, why are you convinced? You're convinced because people fed you this information about yourself that you wanted to hear, that fed your ego, and now you believe it. Nobody, I say sober judgment. People feeding you this information about yourself, and you taking it in and allowing that to control you, and think highly of yourself if they told you highly things, or think lowly of yourself if they told you lowly things. That's not a sober judgment. You're influenced. Your mother or your father telling you, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do. That's not a sober judgment. You're influenced by what someone told you, or someone always telling you, yeah, you the shit, you beautiful, you cute, you all this in a bag of chips. And you take what someone that fed you in your brain and you run with it. That's not a sober judgment. You're influenced. Whatever can influence you, that takes the soberness out of it, because you're high. You're high on what people are telling you. You know what I mean? Whether it's negative or positive, you're high on what people are telling you. So it's not a sober judgment. So sit back and take everything up out of you, what anyone has told you, and think about yourself the way you would think about yourself. Take anything positive that can make you think you're something you're not. Take it up out of you. Whether it's true or not, take it up out of you. Take what they said up out of you. You see what I'm saying? Take people filling your head up, making you feel good about yourself. Take all these things up out of you, and then ask yourself, who am I really? And be completely honest with yourself. Before all the girls start liking you, or before all the men try to date you, take all that out your mind and ask yourself, who do you think about yourself without those things being present? Who do you think you are when nobody's around and you're not drunk, or you're not on some type of drug or influence of someone's opinion of you? Ask yourself these things. So be of sober judgment when you're identifying your reality, because that's why the first part said, do not think yourself more highly than you ought, because it'll bring you back down once you're not under that influence no more. Once that high is gone, you're back to reality. And then it says, the last part, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. We all have different faith. I may believe that I'm not all that, or I may have small faith in playing football or basketball or being athletic in general. That may not be where my faith is. But people can lie to me, influence me, or I can lie to myself and make myself believe that I'm athletic when I know I'm not. You see? And because God had, like this verse says, God had distributed in accordance with the faith God had distributed to each of us. We are a different faith of what we can and can't be. You know, we go around inspiring people and motivating people. And, you know, you have motivational speakers, you have all type of people who we motivate people, and we may not on purpose put something in them that's not in them, or make them believe something that's in them that's not actually in them, because we're motivating them. We want to, you got to do this, you got to do that. We're screaming at them. You see, we're not being realistic. Everybody doesn't have it. Now, it's not on the person that's being the motivational speaker to not do these things because they're just doing what they feel on the inside for them. It's on the person receiving it. When you're receiving all this business advice and advice on how to get rich and get wealthy and become this type of person, become this type of man, become this type of woman, attract this, attract that, you have to be realistic with yourself, because God had distributed faith differently to each of us. It's a lot of things, me being realistic with myself, I'm not able to do, or I don't have faith to do, and I'm realistic with myself. And if God tells me to do it, He's gonna put that faith in you to do it. And that faith may be a mustard seed of faith, but He's gonna put it in you to do it, right? So we have to be realistic with ourselves about what we can and can't do. Everything is not for us. So for example, right? And this may not be pleasing to some people's spirit, but we all think we can attract things that we really can't and shouldn't attract, right? You have to be realistic with yourself in this world of thinking or of wanting to. I want this type of person in my life. I want this type of house, type of car, or whatever, right? You have to be conscious of what God wants for you, because this all falls back to what God wants for you. Because God knows your faith. He knows your limitations, and that's what faith is limitations. I mean, yeah, it's limitations or unlimitations. You know what I mean? Based on your level of faith, right? So He gave all those different faiths. I know for myself, I'm peaceful. I'm a lover. I'm chill. I'm laid back. I'm a philosopher. I'm wise. That's what I am. I'm down to earth. That's what I am. That's where my faith stems from, being that type of person. My faith don't stem from being in the crowd, being loud, being a comedian, being funny. My faith don't steal from those things. My faith stems from being laid back and allowing things to come to me. Being a philosopher, spreading wisdom, being peaceful, not acting off emotions. That's where my faith stems from. You know? So everybody don't have the faith that, every man don't have the same faith that I know I can get her. Some men are realistic to know that she's not for me. That's how you can't look at it like you can't get her, because then you're trying to prove something to yourself. You just have to say, this is not for me. The same thing with women. You have to be realistic with yourself about what you think you can get, or what type of man you think you can get. You have to be realistic with your faith. Your faith is not going to be in getting every type of man, but you may lie to yourself because of what you see on social media and certain things. You know. So be in accordance with the faith that God has distributed to you. You know, be in accordance with that. Because it's different. You don't have faith in everything. So don't allow somebody to give you faith that you don't really have. If somebody tell you, hey, you can do this, you can do that, be honest with yourself. Or do you even believe that you can do that? You see? Go to another verse. First Corinthians 4:7. First Corinthians 4:7, right? Which says, for who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as if you did not? That verse is basically saying, like, none of us are different from each other. You know, and everything we have, whether it's strength, talent, looks, whatever it is you have, status, influence, a certain level of energy, we just borrowing it. It's not ours. It's God's. He gave it to us while we're here on earth, and we should use it accordingly. But another part of that verse, and if you did receive, why did you boast as if you did not? And this is why we should be humble, because the gift is not ours. My wisdom is not mine. You see, it's a gift. It's not mine, though. My understanding, my peaceful nature, is not mine. I was blessed to be these things. Nothing we have is ours. We should just be blessed to have them. You know. So we shouldn't go through life, I guess you could say, being arrogant or thinking that who we are is because we are who we are because of ourselves. Nobody's who they are because of themselves. Don't let the world fool you. Don't let the world fool you. You can control your decisions, but you can't control your results. And what I mean by that is I can work as hard as somebody else and not get their results. Why? Because God didn't give them to me. Period. I can work as hard as them and not receive their results. Maybe it's not for me, or God didn't give them to me, or it's not my time yet. You see? So no gift, no results, no talent, no type of influence, no type of money we have. These are blessings. We receive these things from a higher power. These are not ours. You see? And that will lead me to another verse that'll kind of prove how to accept your reality and be humble in it. Let me see where I want to go with this. I'm going to go to 1 Peter 5 and 6. And it says, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I'm going to read 7 too. So that was 1 Peter 5, verse 6 through 7. And it says, humble yourselves. It's like, when you humble yourself, you understand that nothing you have is of your power. You know, see, I say, you know, that saying, less is more, is tremendously true. It's like reverse psychology, right? And it's because when you accept, once you accept everything you are, negative or positive, then God can lift you up because you're no longer fighting with the world or yourself. So when we're trying to become our ego, it's a fight. We're trying to reach, climb, and prove ourselves, whether it's to ourselves or to people. It's a never-ending fight. It's never enough when it's about your ego. But once you get tired of fighting, you say, you know what, man, this is who I am, and I'm gonna be the best this of who I am. And whatever happens, happens. Once you let go of that fight, now God can lift you up because you took all that weight off your shoulders. To want to be in control, have power, your ego, your pride, you're taking all that weight off of you, and you're leaving it in God's hands, or higher power hands. Me, I know now, all I can do is be Demetrius. That's it. And that's all I seek to be every day, because it's a fight, it's a struggle that you're not able to win. If it's meant for you to be like Jay-Z, then you will get there naturally. You won't have to force it. If it's meant for you to be rich, you'll get there naturally. You won't have to force it. If it's meant for you to be with a certain type of woman with a certain type of body figure, you will be with that type of woman. You won't have to force it. If it's meant for you to be with your ideal man, they can protect and provide for you like you want, you can be there. You won't have to force it. That's why God say, verse 7, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. You know, everything you're fearing and you're worried about, man, give it to God, man. Don't worry about it. You're only one person. We put too much weight on ourselves. And I'm going to end with Luke 18 and 14, right? I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Man, you just accept yourself, God will lift you up. But when you don't accept yourself, he will humble you. A lot of us are humbled. And in our younger days, from my experience and what I know and what I see, in my opinion, the ego is big in your younger days. So you think you got time, you think you can do what you want to do. You think you can just use all that power God gave you, and then he humble you. But if you just let it be what it is, he will exalt you in due time. That's why they say table turn, bridges burn. You see, because the ones who was just chilling laid back, that we that people look down on, them the ones who God lifted up, because they didn't fight to prove themselves. They just allowed whatever it is gonna be, whatever people thought about them, they allowed to be that, and they just continued to work and just be them. They continue to just be them and let it be natural. Whatever it is they were doing, they just let it be natural. While you have some of us who we was fighting, trying to prove our ego to people and to ourselves, and we end up being humbled, and the life end up showing us that, hey, you're not who you think you are. You know, it reminds me, when I think about this type of message, it reminds me of when Eminem got on stage on 8 Mile and he was just rapping. He was like, yeah, I live in a trailer park, yeah, I'm this, I'm that. And he telling the nigga everything that nigga possibly said about him, and then he dropped the mic. He stopped, at that moment, he stopped fighting his reality. He told the truth and he stopped fighting, and then when he dropped the mic, everybody that was talking about him, they couldn't say nothing because he accepted his own reality. So in that moment of him accepting his own reality and saying, yeah, I'm this, I'm that, I'm trash, it's like reverse psychology. Him saying all the negative stuff about him that the world think he thought, and it's like he giving it to God, and then God exalted him at that moment. And when he dropped that mic, the whole crowd went crazy and couldn't nobody say nothing. At that moment, he became a God because he accepted his reality and who he was. The fight was over with the world, and now God lifted him up to be a God. Think about that. Love y'all.